Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is Explanation of Battle Through the Heavens episode number 151 based on novel. So let's start. The mysterious tattoo on Qing Lin's smooth back within the faint rise hot fog of the pool also became partially visible. The snake eyes of the nine-headed snake were once again shut. Hence, the kind of unexpected change from earlier did not appear once again. Xiao Yang knitted his brows slightly. He focused intently on the mysterious tattoo. The tattoo should be quite big as only a portion of the nine-headed snake's body was revealed above the surface of the water. Clearly, its curled body was still under the water. Xiao Yang focused on this mysterious nine-headed snake. His heart felt quite lost. He had never heard of a magical beast of such a shape in this current continent. Moreover, from the fierce aura that seemed to spread from this magical beast that caused him to be without any defense when he was caught off guard, it was obvious that this was not an ordinary magical beast. This thing, just what exactly it is? Xiao Yang knitted his brows tightly. However, he was still at a loss a moment later. This strange shape, even a 9 serene deep-ground python did not look like this, no? Xiao Yang could only helplessly shake his head and suppress his doubt within his heart after thinking for a long time in a futile manner. When Qing Lin wakes up, he could ask her. She should be aware of the exact situation. This thought flashed across Xiao Yang's heart and he also ceased these futile thoughts. He glanced at the color within the pool and once again took out a small jade bottle from his storage ring. He poured out some pale red liquid from within. Attempting to completely remove the emperor python heart-eroding poison from Qing Lin's body involved quite a complicated process. Fortunately, Xiao Yang was currently considered a true alchemist guru. Should it be someone else, it was likely that the person might really not possess the ability to help Qing Lin remove the poison. Although Xiao Yang was clearly aware that attempting to get rid of the emperor python heart-eroding poison was extremely troublesome and time-exhausting, he did not expect that he would spend 4 days. Xiao Yang had remained within the cave during these 4 days. The number of medicinal ingredients that had been thrown into the pool had numbered to over a couple hundred. A frighteningly pure energy permeated the pool. Finally, even the fog itself became viscous. Although time and medicinal ingredients were greatly exhausted, Qing Lin's expression had become increasingly lively under the hot rising energy fog. The slight black vapor that remained between one's brows had also gradually scattered. All of these indicated that the emperor python heart-eroding poison within her body was swiftly being removed. During these few days that Xiao Yang had taken care of the poison removal within Qing Lin's body, Xiao Yang had also paid attention to the mysterious tattoo on her back. After a couple of days of observation, he discovered that there seemed to be an increasing amount of energy being poured into Qing Lin's body. That mysterious 9-headed snake tattoo had also become increasingly clear. Even the snake eyes of the 9 heads had slowly opened a little. It was this slight opening of the snake eyes that would cause Xiao Yang to unwittingly sense a trace of violence being spread within his heart. Fortunately, his mental strength was strong and he could ignore the effects of the unusual 9-headed snake. After experiencing these changes, Xiao Yang also became increasingly curious towards the mysterious tattoo. This thing ought to be something from the ancient times. However, it was likely that the current Doqi continent no longer had such a magical beast. Otherwise, Xiao Yang would definitely have at least heard something about it. While Xiao Yang was curious, he also understood that the most important thing was to resolve the poison within Qing Lin's body first. Hence, he calmed his heart and continued to wait. This kind of bitter care continued for 3 days more before those eyes of Qing Lin, which had been shut for 7 days, finally showed some activity. The faint red pool water continued to emit water bubbles within the pool. Hot air rose and one could vaguely see a lovely graceful figure. During these 10 years, the little girl from back then had already become a vibrant and alluring person. Xiao Yang sat on a rock beside the pool. His shut eyes were also slowly opened. He could sense that a slight unusual activity had appeared within the pool at this moment. Is it about to complete? Xiao Yang softly muttered to himself. He suddenly heard a splashing water sound being emitted from the pool. Immediately, he became stunned and was just about to stand up when the entire cave suddenly shook intensely. What happened? Xiao Yang's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly stood up and his eyes paused on the pool that was covered by fog. The activity was emitted from that spot. Xiao Yang narrowed his eyes. He stared intently at the interior of the pool. There seemed to be an enormous outline that was vaguely visible within the fog. Xiao Yang frowned slightly as he sensed this kind of unusual change. The Doqi within his body was circulated rapidly. The spreading energy fog suddenly wiggled when the Doqi was being circulated within Xiao Yang's body. Immediately, a head-sized strange eye appeared out of nowhere. 3 small dots were enlarged within the eye that was filled with green light. Finally, they transformed into 3 demonic-like emerald flowers that surrounded the eyes and rotated rapidly. Triple jade-green snake flower pupils. Xiao Yang's heart tightened immediately upon seeing the appearance of the demonic eye. His body suddenly rushed backward in a reflex-like action. Xiao Yang's body had just pulled back when that demonic eye suddenly exploded. An enormous figure rushed out from within the pool. It pounced towards Xiao Yang with lightning-like speed. Xiao Yang immediately inhaled a breath of cold air as he looked at the enormous figure that pounced over. It was an enormous snake that possessed 9 savage snake heads. The body of the snake head was dark red in color. It was just like fresh blood that had been sedimented for a countless number of years. At a glance, a ferocious aura that was difficult to describe spread out from it. The enormous snake shook its 9 ferocious heads. The 18 demonic eyes of the snake head had actually become blood red in color at this moment. Moreover, the most mysterious thing was that the interior of these blood-red eyes was actually the same as the triple jade-green snake flower pupils that Qinglin used. Xiao Yang focused intently on the 9-headed snake that charged over explosively towards him. His eyes flicked. A moment later, he suddenly cried out sternly when the snake was about to pounce onto his body, "Qinglin!" This cry of Xiao Yang was accompanied by Do Qi. It was just like a thunder that exploded within the cave, causing the cave to shake violently. The enormous body of the 9-headed snake also trembled under this cry. A struggling expression suddenly surfaced within its blood-red eyes. A moment later, the blood redness actually rapidly faded. An emerald green color slowly recovered. Following the appearance of that jade green color, the enormous body of the 9-head snake suddenly erupted into a wave of powerful glow. Its body also shrunk rapidly. Immediately, it transformed into a small body that violently fell from the midair. Xiao Yang's body flashed when he saw Qinglin's body falling. He grabbed the tiny waist of Qinglin. That soft boneless feeling caused his heart to fluctuate a little. He hurriedly calmed his mind before looking at Qinglin, who was awakening in a lost manner, and said, "Are you all right?" Qinglin, who was slowly opening her eyes, looked at Xiao Yang, who was within close proximity. She was initially startled. The feeling that was transmitted from her body caused her face to redden with a thump sound. She hurriedly escaped from Xiao Yang's hand and hid behind a stone pillar with a flash. Xiao Yang involuntarily rubbed his nose when he heard the shuffling sound that was emitted from behind the stone pillar. He felt a little embarrassed. Only after Qinglin wore her clothes did she walk out from behind the stone pillar with a reddened face. Xiao Yang coughed dryly when he saw her fiery red earlobes. He hurriedly asked with a serious expression, "What happened back then?" "That thing." Qinglin was startled when she heard this. Immediately, she crossed her small hands together and spoke timidly, "That is the soul of the ancient heaven serpent." Ancient heaven serpent? Xiao Yang was stunned. He had heard of the ancient heaven serpent. It was rumored that this was one of the ancient snake magical beast ancestors. It possessed the ability to destroy the world. It was rumored that it was a magical beast that could be considered on the same level as the ancient heaven phoenix. However, the number of this ancient heaven serpent was smaller than even the heaven phoenix. Hence, it had been extinct since the ancient times. There was even less need to mention about it now. That is not right. I remember that the ancient books do not mention that this ancient heaven serpent possesses 9 heads. This is a mutated ancient heaven serpent. I am also unaware of why it is like this. When I have arrived at the Central Plains back then, I had accidentally entered an ancient mountain range and found the skeleton of an ancient heaven serpent. In my curiosity, I end up using the triple jade-green snake flower pupils. How could I expect that I would actually summon a spiritual body? Qinglin's small face was bitter as she said, "It is very difficult to tame this thing. It does not listen to me even though I have used the triple jade-green snake flower pupils. At times, it will come out and cause trouble. Fortunately, with the increase in my strength, the resistance of this thing is also becoming increasingly weak. It is likely that I will easily be able to control it very soon." Xiao Yang's face was stunned. Controlling a mutated ancient heaven serpent? This thing, it was an existence that was comparable to the ancient heaven phoenix. Should it grow in the future, it would even be able to fight against an elite Do Sheng. Didn't you say that your triple jade-green snake flower pupils is unable to control those snake-form magical beasts that possess an ancient bloodline? If this ancient heaven serpent possessed a body, I will indeed be unable to control it. However, this fellow is merely a spirit. Moreover, it is not that I have taken the initiative to control it. Instead, it wishes to stay on me. Qinglin spoke helplessly. There are only 2 types of top-tier snake-form magical beast that truly possess a royal bloodline during the ancient times. One is the ancient heaven serpent while the other is the heaven-swallowing python. The current 9 serene deep-ground python is merely their descendants. Heaven-swallowing python? Xiao Yang lifted his eyebrows almost immediately when he heard this name. He seemed to remember that after Cai Lin's evolution, she appeared to be a 7-colored heaven-swallowing python. The poison within your body should have been resolved, right? Xiao Yang shook his head, glanced at Qinglin and asked. Qinglin nodded. She smilingly said, "Currently, my strength has also reached that of a 1-star Dozun. If I use the triple jade green snake flower pupils, it is likely that I would be able to control a snake form magical beast that has reached the strength of a 4-star Dozun. Xiao Yang involuntarily shook his head helplessly when he heard this. This girl's triple jade green snake flower pupils was indeed too frightening. Even without mentioning its ability to control snake form magical beast, just smoothly controlling that ancient heaven serpent spirit alone in the future would definitely greatly strengthen her fighting strength. Since the poison has been resolved, let's leave. Xiao Yang waved his hand. He turned his body and walked towards the exit of the cave. Since Qinglin's problem was resolved, it should be time to begin refining a body for Yarou Laro. Yarou Laro sat on the leader's seat in the spacious large hall. His eyes were shut. Vast and mighty spiritual strength vibrated around his body, causing the surrounding space to form some slight distortion. The current Yarou Laro might not have a much greater spiritual strength than before, but the fluctuating spiritual strength gave one a feeling of being filled with life. It appeared as though it possessed an even greater liveliness than the spiritual strength of the past. Teacher, is it possible for you to replenish your essence spiritual aura? Xiao Yang, who had received the news, hurriedly walked into the large hall. His eyes glanced at Yarou Laro on the leader's seat. With his current ability, Xiao Yang was naturally able to sense the change in Yarou Laro's current spiritual strength. Immediately, he spoke in a joyous manner. Yarou Laro slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Xiao Yang, who was swiftly walking over before smiling and nodding his head. He said, "The golden grade soul baby fruit's medicinal effect is unexpectedly strong. My essence spiritual aura has once again recovered to the peak. Then the matter of refining a body can begin, right?" Xiao Yang spoke somewhat anxiously. Refining a body still requires various different ingredients. Yarou Laro smilingly replied. "You can rest assured. This disciple has already gathered all these ingredients during these years," Xiao Yang smilingly said. He flicked his finger and a jade bottle appeared in his hand. A dragon eye large medicinal pill was rotating and dripping. A pill fragrance that was so rich, it was impossible to recover, spread out from within it. This caused one's mind to be braced. "This is Tier 8 medicinal pill?" A surprise immediately surfaced in Feng Zunja's eyes as he said when he looked at the medicinal pill. "Yes, moreover, it is a Tier 8 medicinal pill that has experienced 5 pill lightning." Yarou Laro nodded slowly. He immediately revealed the number of pill lightning colors that this medicinal pill had experienced. Immediately, he looked at Xiao Yang in a pleased manner and said, "Your alchemist skill has not been neglected during these years. Ha ha, old fellow, you can rest assured about this. Xiao Yang is also a pill-gathering champion. He is not any lousier than you when you were young." Feng Zunja fondled his beard and laughed out loud. "Teacher, this is the bone-growing blood-fusing pill." Xiao Yang's finger was gently flicked onto the jade bottle and the latter slowly drifted in front of Yarou Laro. Immediately, Xiao Yang took out another transparent jade bottle again. There was a couple of green-red drops of blood within the jade bottle. A frighteningly pure energy spread from within it. This is the essence blood of a heaven demon phoenix. It might lack in quantity but it will be of big use. Xiao Yang smilingly said. This was naturally the essence blood that Xiao Yang had refined from the heaven demon phoenix bones back then. As for a skeleton, I have one that belongs to the peak of the Dozone class. Xiao Yang waved his hand randomly. A corpse that was sealed in ice appeared within the large hall. The only one amongst these 3 ingredients that Xiao Yang was dissatisfied with was this skeleton. If it was in the past, he might feel a little joy at the skeleton of someone at the peak of the Dozone class. However, with the rise in his level, a skeleton of such a strength was no longer able to attract Xiao Yang's notice. If it is a skeleton, I do have one that belongs to a 4-star Dozun here. Feng Zunja by the side laughed. He waved his sleeve and a coffin landed on the ground. There was a pale grey skeleton within the coffin. A faint fluorescence was flowing over the body of the skeleton. This is an enemy of mine in the past. He subsequently died in my hands. I was afraid that no one would deal with his corpse, so I ended up helping him keep it. Xiao Yang was involuntarily a little speechless when he heard Feng Zunja's casual tone. It seemed that Feng Zunja possessed quite a great enmity with this person. Otherwise, he would not deal with the other person's corpse. All of these 3 ingredients are of top quality. The materials that we refine from them should be able to allow Yarou Chen to recover to his previous peak strength. However, I wonder if he will be able to break through the Dozun class and reach the Doshan class. Feng Zunja fondled his beard and voiced his thoughts. Difficult. Yarou Laro shook his head. Dozun and Dosheng were 2 completely different levels. An elite Dozun could be considered a true top-tier expert in the continent. A Dosheng, on the other hand, stood at the peak of a golden pagoda. Given the foundation of the Central Plains, elite Dozuns could be considered few but they were not especially rare. However, an elite Dosheng was entirely different. Just take Xiao Yang as an example. Despite him having arrived at the Central Plains for so many years, he had yet to meet a genuine elite Dosheng. Of course, The precondition of this was that one did not include the Do Sheng skeleton that Xiao Yang had met in the ancient remains. That thing merely had a little remnant elite Do Sheng spirit. It could not be considered a true expert. Even though this was the case, the skeleton that had lost traces of life caused Xiao Yang, Old Ghost Jai Xing and the other experts to appear extremely miserable. They nearly ended up falling in an unexpected situation. Through this case, it was possible to vaguely observe just how frightening a genuine Do Sheng was. That level truly possessed the great might to destroy the heavens and earth. Since the ingredients are all gathered, we should act tomorrow. The earlier Yarrow Chen recovers his peak strength, the less the Falling Star Pavilion needs to worry about the revenge by the Hall of Soul. A branch hall of the Hall of Soul was destroyed and it was taken advantage of within the ancient remains. Given the way the Hall of Soul does things, it would definitely not easily swallow such a great loss. Feng Zunja voiced his thoughts. Yes. Xiao Yang and Yarrow Larrow nodded. Currently, everything might appear calm, but it was obvious that this was the calm before the storm. After deciding with Yarrow Larrow on the time to refine a body, Xiao Yang returned to his quarters due to it being late. Once he returned to his room, he sat on the bed and mused for a moment. He flipped his hand and 3 jade white ribs appeared within his palm. The 3 ribs were naturally those that Xiao Yang had ripped from the skeleton. Inside it hid the secrets of the Tian class Do technique. However, ever since he returned to the Falling Star Pavilion, he had yet to carefully observe it due to him busily removing the poison from Qing Lin. After hearing Feng Zunja mention the matter of the Hall of Soul taking revenge soon, his heart had also become a little pressured. When faced with such a large faction, he must ultimately raise his own combat strength. The best method to raise one's fighting strength was naturally to practice high-class Do techniques. The legendary Tian class Do technique was very strong. Even at this moment, Xiao Yang was unable to forget the terrifying strength that was created when the Do Sheng skeleton had unleashed the Tian class Do technique back then. The ribs felt cool when it entered Xiao Yang's hands. It did not possess the kind of rough feeling of a bone. Instead, it appeared just like a perfect jade when one touched it, appearing smooth and cool, giving one an extremely wonderful feeling. The ribs were covered by tiny mysterious characters. These characters were unusually mysterious. It gave one an obscure feeling. Xiao Yang carefully observed the 3 ribs in detail. He remembered those mysterious characters in his mind, but he was unable to decipher them. Looks like an ordinary method will not be able to open these ribs. Xiao Yang's face revealed an expression of deep thought. A moment later, he placed the ribs gently on his forehead. Spiritual strength spread out. However, it was directly reflected back when it touched the ribs. Xiao Yang was immediately startled before he sighed in relief. There is actually a seal on the surface of the bone. Xiao Yang clenched his hand after he had this thought. Purple-brown flame curled and rose from his palm. After which, it wrapped around 3 white jade-like ribs. A frightening temperature swiftly caused the air within the room to become dry. The frightening flame crazily grilled the bone. However, this seemingly weak bone did not move even a little. Its color did not even change a little. Xiao Yang was not surprised at this situation. If it was so easy to break a seal placed by an elite Do Sheng, it would appear far too much like child's play. Xiao Yang maintained a calm mood. He steadily allowed the 3000 lotus heart flame to continue grilling the 3 ribs. He slowly shut his eyes and actually directly entered his training mode. The purple-brown flame burned fiercely within the room. The 3 ribs within it also vaguely emitted a faint glow. This grilling continued from the evening to late into the night, lasting for nearly 10 hours. Under the crazy burning by the 3000 lotus heart flame, the 3 ribs gradually changed a little. The kind of jade white color also slowly became pale. A kind of deep dark golden color replaced it. If one was to look carefully, one would find a strange ripple quietly spreading under the golden light. A strange sound of flowing liquid was suddenly emitted from within the quiet room. Xiao Yang's tightly shut eyes were also slowly opened at this moment. His eyes looked towards the flame in front of him before becoming startled. The flame at this moment no longer had any traces of the ribs within. Only a strange dark golden liquid remained. The liquid slowly flowed within the flame. It appeared to possess its own intelligence and would occasionally gather into various strange shapes. Was this the manner after the seal has been opened? Xiao Yang muttered softly. He hesitated for a moment before inhaling a deep breath of somewhat dry air. His hand was gently extended. After which, it reached into the flame and paused for a moment. Finally, a finger was inserted into the dark golden liquid. Xiao Yang's finger was inserted into the liquid and a change occurred. One could see the liquid suddenly wiggling intensely. After which, it firmly winded around Xiao Yang's finger. It wrapped around his entire hand in an instant. Hiss! The dark golden liquid wrapped around Xiao Yang's right hand. An intense pain that could not be contained was suddenly transmitted from his palm. This caused Xiao Yang's face to twitch. After being wrapped by the dark golden liquid, his hand actually began to wiggle strangely. The sound of bone being pressed together that was also emitted. My hand is about to be crippled. The squeezing feeling became increasingly intense. Just when Xiao Yang thought that his hand would be squeezed until it was shattered, the intense pain suddenly came to a halt. The dark golden liquid also flowed into his hand like floodwater and swiftly disappeared. Xiao Yang did not even have the time to be stunned by this strange scene before his head suddenly shook at this moment. A golden light vaguely surfaced in his eyes. A low and deep muttered sound was also emitted from his mouth. This is Great Heaven Creation Palm. An explosion sounded deep within Xiao Yang's mind. His soul also trembled intensely at this moment. Immediately, his gaze gradually became blurry. By the time he recovered, he discovered that he was within a mysterious realm. This space was not very big and there was also not the slightest life force within this empty space. Xiao Yang's eyes swept around a little. After which, they suddenly paused on a certain spot in the empty space. An extremely ordinary figure was standing with his hands behind him at that spot. Xiao Yang was basically unable to sense even the slightest aura or do qi trace from that body. That manner was as though he was just a normal person. However, this feeling that he got from his sight caused Xiao Yang's heart to become increasingly grave. How could an ordinary person appear in this kind of mysterious place? If he guessed correctly, this figure should be the true owner of the remain. This place should be a memory space that is hidden within the Do technique. This figure is also not a genuine elite Do Sheng. Instead, it is merely a memory fragment of his. Xiao Yang fell into a deep thought as he looked at the figure. With his current experience, he would naturally not be surprised. After musing for a moment, he clearly grasped this human figure's background. It was just as Xiao Yang had expected. This figure did not glance towards Xiao Yang. Soon after the latter entered this realm, a calm water-like voice slowly resounded within this space. Great Heaven Creation Palm, Tian Class Low-Level Do Technique. It is created by this saint by using all of my strength to merge 100 Do techniques. This palm technique pays attention to the meaning of creation. Using a palm to break the sky and strength to shatter everything. Xiao Yang's eyes became increasingly bright when he heard that calm voice that seemed to speak to itself. Tian Class Do Technique, exceeding the ordinary and surpassing a saint. By being able to obtain the secret hidden by this saint in the bones, you can be considered a person of affinity. Since you have obtained the bones, your hand should have been refined by the golden spirit saliva. Remember, the Great Heaven Creation Palm can only be successfully used by a hand that has been refined. Otherwise, one will definitely encounter a backlash. Xiao Yang was startled when he heard this. He immediately fell into a deep thought. That intense pain from earlier was actually that so-called golden spirit saliva refining his own palm. It is indeed worthy of being a Tian Class Do techniques. It actually requires this process in order to obtain a complete inheritance. Xiao Yang shook his head in surprise. If he skipped that refinement step, he would likely not dare to unleash this so-called Great Heaven Creation Palm even if he successfully learned it. The Great Heaven Creation Palm possessed the strength of creation. After that calm voice slowly sounded, a faint light suddenly erupted from the figure's body. That body also swiftly turned transparent. It revealed an extremely clear vein root within it. A trace of dark golden energy shuttled through these veins and outlined an extremely strange vein root. This is the meridian root of the Great Heaven Creation Palm. A joy suddenly surged within Xiao Yang's eyes when he saw this scene. He hurriedly focused his mind and firmly remembered the root of the energy within his mind. That vein root was circulated a couple of times before it slowly faded away. Fortunately, this circulation route had already been firmly remembered in Xiao Yang's mind. After the vein root faded away, the light glow within the figure's body also once again disappeared. A dark golden light slowly brightened. Immediately, a hand was swung out and it heavily landed on the empty space. Bang! The palm fell and a frightening energy immediately swept out like a storm. An enormous black-colored light circle was once again formed under that human figure's palm. The light circle was formed. After which, it scattered apart with lightning-like speed. The surrounding space appeared like a glass that had been forcefully scattered. It fell apart almost instantly. Xiao Yang inhaled a deep breath of air as he looked at the black light circle that rapidly spread apart within his eyes. He did not reveal any expression of panic. Instead, he pointed towards the figure within the dark black light circle from a great distance and bowed. Destined person, remember this saint name, Saint Jiao Hua, creation. A faint voice suddenly resounded within Xiao Yang's mind like a thunder. The figure also became gradually faded within the dark black light circle. Finally, it completely vanished. The final figure that an elite Do Sheng had left behind in this world disappeared in this manner. Xiao Yang nodded quietly. He allowed the dark black light circle to charge over and shatter his body. Xiao Yang's tightly shut eyes were suddenly opened in his room. A turbid breath slowly followed his throat before being exhaled. He muttered, Saint Jiao Hua. Xiao Yang muttered a little before he completely awakened a moment later. His eyes looked towards his right hand and saw that this right hand currently possessed a vague dark golden light that appeared like metal. Sinking his mind into his body, Xiao Yang began to roam around his right hand. Immediately, he was surprised to discover that a couple of extremely covert veins in the interior of the right hand seemed to have been opened. These veins were connected to each other, appearing like a strange cycle. It appeared exceptionally mysterious when one looked at it. Xiao Yang recalled a little as he watched these couple looping of tiny veins. Only then did he discover that the path which the vein was looping around were at the most critical positions. In other words, without the direction from these few looping veins, any attempt to forcefully use the great heaven creation palm would only lead to the vast and mighty energy gathering at one's palm without being able to be released from one's body. It was like a bottle becoming increasingly bloated with air. It would sooner or later explode. At that time, the arm of the person unleashing it would likely be completely shattered. No wonder it said that only a palm that had been refined by the golden spiritual saliva can use it. It is actually because of this. Xiao Yang felt a sudden understanding within his heart. He immediately sighed quietly. He was indeed worthy of being an elite Do Sheng of a certain generation. He was actually able to create such a mysterious method. There were tens of thousands of meridians within one's body with endless number of secretive veins. It was not an easy matter to open a useful vein. However, I wonder if I can use this great heaven creation palm now? Xiao Yang's eyes vaguely contained a heat dancing within it. This palm's might was something that he had personally witnessed within the ancient remains back then. Quite a number of experts present had died under this palm. If it was not because Xiao Yang's group had fled quickly, it was likely that the result would be difficult to predict. Xiao Yang's heart greatly coveted the great heaven creation palm at that day. Now, he had luckily managed to learn it. How could his heart calm down? Rubbing his hands together, Xiao Yang leaped down from the bed and stood straight within the room. He inhaled a deep breath of air. The Do Chi within his body followed the memory path within his mind and began to slowly rotate. The Do Chi was circulated extremely slowly initially. Moreover, the path was also quite complicated. Quite a number of mistakes occurred during this period of time. Fortunately, Xiao Yang reacted quickly. Once he discovered that the path was wrong, he would immediately scatter his Do Chi. This prevented him from suffering any injuries. After experiencing a couple of failures, Xiao Yang also gradually became familiar with it. An hour or so later, he had finally successfully completely a vein circulation. The moment that he completed the circulation, Xiao Yang's arm trembled suddenly. A dark golden light suddenly surged. Immediately, he was stunned to discover that the Do Chi within his body was flowing like floodwater. The direction that it was flowing towards was his right hand. What a frightening Do Chi exhaustion. Even with Xiao Yang's strength, his expression involuntarily changed when he sensed the rate at which his Do Chi was exhausted. This Tian-class Do technique was actually a glutton that was not full no matter how one fed it. With an increasing amount of Do Chi gathered on Xiao Yang's palm, the dark golden light also became increasingly strong. A moment later, a black glow finally appeared in the middle of the golden light when it had soared to the limit. A frightening suction force surged out the moment the black glow appeared. The surrounding dark golden light was swallowed into the black glow within the blink of an eye. It also gradually became bigger at this moment. What a terrifying energy! After having personally used this great heaven creation palm, Xiao Yang finally completely comprehended its terror. Immediately, his expression changed a little. This was the Falling Star Pavilion. There were elders and disciples of the Falling Star Pavilion around his room. If this palm was to be released, it was likely that no life would remain within a 100-meter radius. Some cold sweat surfaced on Xiao Yang's forehead when he sensed this. He inhaled a couple of deep breaths and forcefully halted the exhaustion of Do Chi within his body. He immediately clenched his palm slightly. That peach-size black glow shook for a moment when his hand was clenched. Finally, it slowly became pale under Xiao Yang's shocked eyes. It eventually turned into Do Chi once again and surged into Xiao Yang's body. Xiao Yang heaved a long sigh of relief as he sensed the enormous Do Chi that once again recovered within his body. He rubbed the cold sweat on his forehead, raised his right hand and looked over with stunned eyes. A moment later, he parted his mouth and laughed. This was because the thing that he needed to practice this great heaven creation palm was already preset by that Saint Jiao Hua. Hence, the speed at which he mastered this Tian-class Do technique had basically far exceeded the other Do techniques. It must be said that this was indeed a great blessing. Great heaven creation palm. Haha, I wonder how interesting old ghost Jai Xing's expression will be should he see this Do technique the next time I meet him. Xiao Yang smiled slightly after gently rubbing his right hand together. A cold glint flickered within his dark black eyes. This great heaven creation palm will be the sickle that would take the life of the old ghost the next time they meet. The interior of the stone tower at the back mountain of the Falling Star Pavilion during the morning of the next day. Teacher, the body refinement will begin soon. Are you ready? Xiao Yang took out the 4-star Do Zun skeleton of Feng Zunja and placed it gently on the stone platform. After which, his gaze turned towards Yarrow Larrow by the side and spoke. Yes. Yarrow Larrow nodded in a solemn manner. Despite his state of mind, a ripple had involuntarily appeared in his heart at this moment. Old Feng, the body refinement, and the merging process this time around might require a period of time. Do not allow anyone to enter the stone tower during this period of time. Xiao Yang turned his gaze, looked at Feng Zunja by the side again and spoke in a deep voice. You can rest assured that the Falling Star Pavilion will enter into a cautious state once you begin. The experts that have gone out will also be summoned back. Feng Zunja's face was grave as he nodded. Should Yarrow Larrow recover his peak strength, the Falling Star Pavilion would be able to strengthen rapidly. At that time, it would be able to possess some ability to resist the vengeance by the Hall of Soul. Hence, nothing must be allowed to go wrong. Xiao Yang nodded slightly. He gradually calmed his mind. A moment later, he inhaled a deep breath of air. He flicked his finger. The jade bottle that contained the bone-growing blood-fusing pill slowly drifted towards Yarrow Larrow. Yarrow Larrow was naturally extremely familiar with these steps. He did not hesitate even a little as he extended his hand and received the jade bottle. After which, a thought passed through his heart. A wisp of spirit flew out and lingered beside Xiao Yang. Feng Zunja and Little Fairy Doctor's group exchanged gazes when they saw that Xiao Yona and Yarrow Chen had begun. They quietly left the stone tower without even emitting the slightest unusual sound that could interrupt those two. Everyone withdrew without causing Xiao Yang's attention to be split. The latter's expression was solemn. He grabbed the wisps of soul beside him before slamming his palm on the skeleton lying on the stone platform, forcefully slamming the soul into the skeleton. Teacher, I will first refine the body. Once I succeed, you will be able to enter it and complete the merger step. Xiao Yang cried out in a low voice. He clenched his hand and a jade bottle appeared within his hand. Green-red blood slowly flowed within the jade bottle. A frightening energy fluctuation also spread from within it, causing this entire space to continue vibrating. This time around, Xiao Yang had prepared top-quality items in order to refine a body for Yarrow Larrow. Hence, the difficulty of the refinement would far exceed that from when he had helped Tianhua Zunja. Go. Xiao Yang beckoned with his finger. The green-red blood within the jade bottle shot out. Finally, it scattered on the greyish-white bones. Immediately, waves of white smoke erupted. A hissing sound continued to appear. The green-red color swiftly scattered when the green-red blood touched the greyish-white skeleton. Within the blink of an eye, the color of the skeleton had turned from grey to white, transforming into a beautiful green-red color. Moreover, the skeleton also emitted a rich energy ripple. Xiao Yang raised his hand upon seeing this. The green-red skeleton suspended in the air by itself. He waved his sleeve and the purple-brown flame surged out immediately, wrapping around the skeleton. The essence blood of the heaven demon phoenix was extremely overbearing. Moreover, it also had difficulty merging. Hence, he must use the heavenly flame to grill this energy deep into every bone of this skeleton. Only then would the skeleton be allowed to absorb all of these shocking energy. With this fierce grilling from the flame, a slight green-red light also appeared on the green-red bone. Even though this was the case, the high temperature that had seeped in still caused the surface of the skeleton to form a slight bubble. Occasionally, the bubble would burst and a rich energy would spread. This kind of tempering and grilling was a process that exhausted a great amount of time. Hence, it continued for nearly an entire day before Xiao Yang finally slowly opened his tightly shut eyes. At this moment, the green redness on the skeleton had undoubtedly become much dimmer. It no longer possesses the bright color from before. Xiao Yang clearly understood that this was because that energy had gradually seeped deep into the skeleton under the high temperature. Xiao Yang let out a long breath. He glanced at Yarrow Larrow beside him and the latter nodded with a slight smile. Xiao Yang's current flame control had undoubtedly advanced very greatly when compared to back then. It could likely even be comparable to his level. This caused Yarrow Larrow to feel pleased. Although he also valued Xiao Yang's strength, he was after all an alchemist. The pill refinement ability of his disciple was something that he paid most attention to. Xiao Yang also smiled when he saw that pleased expression of Yarrow Larrow. He had just kept the flame when he suddenly thought of something. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly walked towards the stone platform. After which, he violently broke the right arm of the skeleton in front of Yarrow Larrow's uncertain eyes. Yarrow Larrow was startled when he saw Xiao Yang's action. He did not understand the reason for it. Try this, Xiao Yang smiled. He took out the Do Sheng right arm, which he had obtained from the ancient remains, from his storage ring. After which, it was joined onto the right shoulder of the skeleton. Although the size was not very suitable, the two quickly merged completely together after the trimming from Xiao Yang's flame. Do Sheng arm? Yarrow Larrow's eyes were outstanding. He saw the jade white bone arm and his expression changed. A shocked expression surged up his eyes. Yes. I have obtained it from the ancient remains. Xiao Yang smiled and nodded. He said, regardless of whether this thing is of any use, its hardness is completely up to standard. The hardness of the Do Sheng skeleton was something that Xiao Yang had personally witnessed. This thing definitely possessed its extraordinary point. However, he did not wish to leave it for his own use. Moreover, he was unable to use it even if he wanted to. It was impossible for him to cut his own arm for this thing before joining it to him. He was also uncertain if any sequelae would occur because of it. If it really did exist, he would end up losing more than he has gained. The current Yarou Laro did not possess this kind of worry. He did not possess a body. This new body would gradually perfectly merge with him once he entered it. The arm would also truly belong to him in the future. Yarou Laro nodded slightly. Placing a Do Sheng arm during this body refinement step was also something that he had never heard before. However, since it was something belonging to a Do Sheng, it should be quite useful. It might even become an opportunity for him to break through to a Do Sheng in the future. After directly connecting the arm onto the skeleton, Xiao Yang once again used the 3000 Lotus Heart Flame to refine it for a while. He finally nodded after the bone hand and the skeleton was perfectly connected. After a long period of refinement, that greyish-white skeleton had also undergone a drastic change in appearance. Its entire body was green and red. Although his right hand still possessed a jade-white color, the end of the arm also had some green-red color adhering onto it. The two had completely merged together under the grilling from the 3000 Lotus Heart Flame. Teacher. Xiao Yang's expression also became serious when he saw this scene. He cried out in a deep voice. Yes. Yarou Laro nodded. With his old sharp eyes, he was naturally aware that now was the best opportunity. Immediately, he swiftly took out that bone-growing blood-fusing pill from the jade bottle and swallowed it. His body swiftly turned illusory, transforming into a ray of light that rushed into the skeleton. Bang! The skeleton trembled violently when Yarou Laro's soul merged into the skeleton. Those empty eye sockets gradually possessed a glow. At the same time, a frightening mysterious energy spread out from the interior of the skeleton. Under this energy, some mysterious flesh had actually begun to appear on the skeleton. The flesh was grown on the white bones. This miracle was naturally brought by the bone-growing blood-fusing pill. Teacher, endure on. Xiao Yang's face had become grave as he saw the swiftly wiggling flesh being formed on the skeleton. He let out a low cry and the purple flame that wrapped around the skeleton immediately burned fiercely. Under the burning of this flame, the blood and flesh that had just been formed were actually being incinerated into ashes. However, when the ash scattered, a frightening mysterious energy once again spread out. The rate at which the flesh grew became increasingly quick. At the end, it was possible to see the rapid wiggling of the flesh granulation. A blood-blurry human outline was swiftly taking shape. This burning and growth continued for nearly 10 hours. The skin structure of the flesh was completely formed under the grilling of the flame. Following the birth of flesh, the skeleton on the stone platform had also completely turned into a human form. Subsequently, all that remained was to wait for Yarou Laro to completely merge with this body. After which, that Yarou Zunja, who had stunned the continent back then, would be truly able to revive from the bath of flames. At the same time, an enormous black large hall crept like a fierce beast from the ancient times within the deep mountains in the western region of the Central Plains. A frightening energy ripple that could chill one's heart spread vaguely. Black fog suddenly surged out from all directions within the large hall. A moment later, the black fog gathered. It transformed into many black figures that stood in the empty air. Powerful dark chilling aura swept over this entire place. Welcome 9th Tianzuan. Many black figures appeared. Immediately, they knelt down in the sky. Their respectful voice immediately resounded over this entire place. During the time that these black shadows were kneeling, the entire space also slowly became distorted. A moment later, a blue figure slowly appeared. A faint voice also sounded along with it. Do all of you still remember the mission this time around? Destroy the Falling Star Pavilion, capture Xiao Yang and Yarou Chen. Nearly 100 orderly loud cries simultaneously sounded. Yes, let's get moving. The blue figure nodded slightly. Immediately, his feet gently stepped on the ground. His body moved and slowly disappeared. When this blue figure disappeared, an elder, who was leading the black-clothed people, also raised his head. Surprisingly, it was old ghost Zhaixing. At this moment, his eyes turned towards the northern sky. A ferocious expression surfaced on his face. Xiao Yang, the old me will see just who will rescue you this time around. This video will end here.